Celtic Stuff Live.
Welcome to Celtic Stuff Live on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for the Boston Celtics, who just wrapped up draft night just a few short days ago. The 12th annual Celtic Stuff Live draft night show on Celtics blog and CLNS Media went off without a hitch. Great guest, Sam Vecini. We had Adam Kaufman from Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media, and also newly to the CLNS Media family, Jeff Goodman of the Good and Plenty podcast was our headliner right after the Celtics picked Robert Williams. You can find that on our feed. You'll be able to listen to our final hour of the draft show, and also Sam Sheehan, a good friend of the show, host of Celtics Roundtable on CLNS Media, made an appearance in that hour as well. We had a good time. I guess we can't call him Bob, but maybe we could call him Robert Tractor Trailer. No, I guess we couldn't do that either. That's probably taken too, John. But fell all the way to 27, didn't elect to do the combine and workouts, etc. And there were some health concerns. I guess when we did the interview with Goodman, none of us were really keyed in on that, but that's some news that came out since then that people weren't necessarily all that excited about not having health information, and maybe there's a possible knee trouble that's lingering. He was a lottery pick projected last year, a lottery pick projected or just outside of the lottery projected this year. We get him all the way down to 27, and here's the beauty of a pick like this. Robert really fills a position in terms of a high flyer. He's a rim runner. He can go coast to coast. We've seen that. He can get above the rim. A fantastic dunker, soft hands. More importantly, could be that shot blocker or at least shot-altering presence in the paint that the Celtics have really severely lacked. Even in 10 to 12 minutes a game, that could have a huge impact on sort of the dynamics of their rotations next season, John.
A lot there. Yeah, no, I think so. And one thing that came out of the, what's real, what do you want to be called? Bob is not what he's going by, right? So we know that. And then, but that's what Danny Ainge told Terry Rozier during the live stream on Bleacher Report, which is a whole nother conversation for probably later in the summer. But,
no, we gotta have that to some degree today too. Because, Terry just signed his ticket out of town, right? It's funny because the way everybody covered it is they really kind of dumbed it down and made it sort of a soft issue. I don't think that's a soft issue at all. I think that right there had the Celtics executive undies in a bunch for sure. I'll tell you what, if that happened to me and I was in his role, as much of a nice, smiley guy I am, I'm pretty easygoing, I'd be fuming.
Yeah, it's not great. Philly's on the clock and we're gonna pick Bob Williams and it's not good. It's not good. But look, Terry, we love Terry. I'm not sure, at least publicly, we've seen any issue with what's going on with how that played out. So we'll see. I'm sure Terry will say something at some point about what sort of slap on the wrist he got, because that he's an open book.
He's gonna get one for sure.
I would think so. So yeah, going back to Boo Butt, as apparently that's his nickname, and I think I trust.
Let's not roll with that.
Let's not. Yes, that's what I'm trusting Celtics Twitter to kind of fix that, particularly weird Celtics Twitter, to fix that, the error of that, because Boo Butt is just, that's not gonna go. That's not gonna fly.
If he shows up to training camp trying to pull off Boo Butt, do you know what the vets on this team are gonna do to him? It's going to be, even Tatum is going to just snack on that. He's going to have such a heyday with making fun of that nickname. He's got to come up with something else. It's a no-go.
Look at how Isaiah is still going at Jaylen Brown's hair on Instagram all these years. We got 2 years since the guy's been picked and he's still going after Jaylen's hair. It's never going to end, probably.
Yeah, you don't
even
live it down.
Even if we find another one, they're never going to end with Boo Butt. That one's here to stay, I think. At least in terms of being picked on. In terms of the player though, like, it's interesting. Like, has Brad Stevens ever had a guy like this? You go back to to Butler. Can you think? I mean, I'm not an expert on Butler basketball in the last 15, 20 years, but I can't imagine they had too many guys like Robert Williams on that team. And even look the Celtics. I mean, you go back, you want Tony Battie. I mean, that's kind of rim running, big, but not in the Brad Stevens era.
Maybe Parrish is the closest thing to most recency. I mean, seriously, it's been that long, and even then, that comparison is not really a very strong one. It's just you got some of the length, and Parrish could get up and down the floor, but was he the shot blocker that Robert Williams projects to be?
Right.
I mean, it's really hard. Maybe it's Cowens. That's how far back.
I don't know. It's tough. Like, I think the one that I would say that maybe fits in that is Brandon Wright. When Brandon Wright came here for about 5 days.
That doesn't count. That's like, you gotta, it doesn't count. You gotta have some tenure. You gotta at least have a season and a half.
Well, and it seemed like, they got rid of him because he wasn't fitting in. So, look, that was
Tyler
a weird
Zeller?
season.
It's probably Tyler Zeller.
Athleticism, Tyler Zeller.
He got up and down the floor, but again, the shot blocking, dude, it's crazy. The only thing is we're like worried about his head too, right? So we get the knee thing, but then, and I love the way Scott Souza kind of laid this out for everybody, but he's like, look, very curious. He winds up being late, or he's a no-show for his phone interview with the press. Then they reschedule it. He comes on and he's essentially unintelligible. So, I'm gonna draw my own conclusions and say he's a little bit of a party animal. And based on some of the off-court stuff that was going on at Texas A&M last year, that certainly could point in that direction too. But also, let's take out another piece, because you don't always get everything detail by detail from the press because they can't necessarily validate it, et cetera. But what did Goodman say on the draft night show? He said what they need to do is put his locker right next to Al Horford. So that's probably a no surprise. It's going to be one of those scenarios. He's got all the talent in the world. Can he get it right? Can he be the professional that he needs to be? There is no better culture, as everybody has said over and over, than the Celtics culture for him. And it's a high risk, high reward type of scenario.
It is. And, one thing that we didn't know at that time and has been reported a little bit more in the press is that he fired his agent. I want to say Robert Williams, but Booba is just sticking. I got to be honest with you.
Stop it.
I got to stop right now. But Rob's got, he fired his agents, brought in Bill Duffy, who is a longtime NBA agent, someone represented Rajon Rondo. So obviously there's some relationship there with Boston. I think very good relationship. Things worked pretty well with Rondo, and despite the fact he was quite a contentious sort, and we all know those things, they seem to work out pretty well with Duffy and Rondo, and I don't think there were any sort of issues lingering there, which is a good sign. Certainly, you need a full court press effectively on all sides helping that. And as you said, as Goodman said, I should say, yes, it's coach, it's GM, it's veteran leadership. It's your agent. It's having the guys who you're listening to who aren't part of the organization reinforcing that. And so let's hope that when we're moving into here, this season, that he's getting that reinforcement all around to say, look, this is the straight and narrow. And the good thing is he provides something nobody else on the team does. The bad sign is the Celtics have not had someone who he doesn't fit into a mold which they can say, oh, this is what we need. Just go do this and it will be successful. It's introducing kind of a new element to things. But if there's anybody you would trust to be able to be flexible and malleable in their game planning, it's Brad Stevens.
Yeah, amen to that. Hey, follow Celtics Stuff Live on Twitter at CSL_tweet live. You can follow me at CSL_Justin. John is at CSL_Duke. The entire CLNS Media Network at CLNS Media, Facebook.com/CLNS fans, and download the CLNS Media app for iOS and Android. Simply search CLNS Media in your app marketplace. And finally, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/CLNS Media for high definition, full length locker room interviews during the season, the Garden Report, and the Round Table, among many others, including 8 to 10 minute video snippets from John and I. So make sure you go over to youtube.com/CLNS Media. And John, as we kind of look at this whole scenario, you're right. The culture is big, everything else. I look back, I made the comparison during the draft night show asking Goodman, all right, Robert Williams, Kendrick Perkins, both drafted at the same position. Kendrick out of high school. Robert's got 2 years in college, but and really Goodman said, no question, Robert Williams, way higher upside. Both of these cats are from Louisiana. And when we talk about that veteran presence, I'm going to make another parallel, which is to say that Perkins' work ethic was really fueled, and as was Rondo's, since you went there, by Kevin Garnett's infectious and really over-the-top focused personality. Is that the best way to say it? I don't know. But high energy, alpha dog, really, really all over that locker room. Kendrick fed off that. Without KG, would Kendrick have been able to have even close to the career that he did have? I mean, there was some talent there, but to Goodman's point, he didn't have a lot of soft hands. Put the ball on the floor before he went back up for the jam. Lots of kind of things that most professionals don't get away with doing, but he's a little bit of a tough guy inside. So then I say, okay, let's make that comparison. Let's draw it over to Al Horford and say, well, Al is a different kind of unassuming leader. He's really, if you could have somebody as successful as KG and then compare personalities, you're talking complete opposite end of the spectrum with Al Horford. Can he have that same kind of impact that KG had on Kendrick? Can Al have that same impact on Robert? Or do you think Robert Williams is kind of a guy that would need a KG type personality to get in line?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't think we know enough. The only thing we have is a scratchy, unintelligible, phone interview. I think we're going to know a lot more once we get through, once we get through summer league, we'll be able to figure it out. But yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, so much of this is really, who takes who under whose wing, Remember when Ray Allen got there, he and Rondo were buddy, and then 2 years later, obviously things went a little sideways there. So who knows? I'm gonna say that the quiet, calm leadership is going to be helpful. I get the sense that, he's just looking for somebody who's going to lead him. And I think Al's going to do that the right way, but it could be anybody. It may not be the guy who's his position. It may end up being Kyrie. It may end up being
distracted because you said buddy and missed a perfect opportunity to say that Ray Allen was his boo, buddy. It's over. Yeah. We just derailed the show. I'm sorry. It was just, this whole thing is gonna be off the hook. I mean, things get a little loose in the summer anyway, right? But seriously, a nickname like that just completely derails every show. It's rough. But yeah, no, but it's a really good point though. Things take turns that are out of our hands, and quite honestly, he's going to be in a completely different part of the country, right? You take the South and I'm not saying there's not work ethic in the South, there is, but the style is much more kind of relaxed and easygoing, and I don't want to say not on time, but I just mean, time is not like it is in the Northeast. Like if you're 2 minutes late, somebody's actually mad at you in the Northeast. Like that whole attitude and culture, that's where I get a little concerned for somebody coming up is just, and again, it's really probably not that influential for somebody who travels for most of their work, but it is a different culture in the Northeast, and there's going to be some culture shock for Robert Williams, boo buddy there.
Yeah, and to that point, I think one name that we should bring up that we haven't yet, but you mentioned Kendrick Perkins. I think the other comp that we want to look at is Al Jefferson. And Al had some special skills that allowed him to be.
He was out of Mississippi, right?
Right, Mississippi. So, there's that end of it. And I think that, he came from a small town, a guy who was well thought of, but, there were questions and, his condition had to get in the right shape and all this. The Celtics had to figure that out. And he was entering a very different team. I mean, that was a bad team that Al was coming into. Very different now. And of course, got traded away before the Garnett years. But worked out a pretty good NBA career working on a good organization. And I'd argue probably the coach now is better established to help Robert Williams become a pro than Doc was. And that's not as a shot at Doc, but I just think, Doc Doc was a little bit more thinking about vets and thinking about wins than thinking about development. And so let's hope that Brad and his staff are able to get Robert going and find those little nuggets of things that he can find success with and build off of. 'Cause that's the hard thing. I mean, even if you look at the roster right now, is he going to play ahead of Tice? I mean, I don't see that. I don't see that happening. Baines, and if they start the way you're talking about in terms of Horford and then the three wings and then Kyrie, that's even more of an issue in terms of trying to get Robert Williams on the floor. So
yeah, Tice has been
challenge.
doing his rehab. Lots of pictures out there, and it seems like he's going to be on track. And I think a lot of people. I'm not saying I'm not high on Tice, but maybe not as high as many of the fan bases out there. They're very encouraged about him coming back. And the Celtics are essentially getting a veteran in Tice as a rookie last year, but 27-year-old rookie with a lot of time overseas. So, that's, again, we can get into the Rookie of the Year award and all of that stuff. And, you know how I feel about bringing somebody in who's been a pro for 5 years and calling him an NBA rookie. But in many ways, Tice was not a rookie either. And so, more upside on Williams, but this team is trying to compete next season, and so non-rookies or non-second year players, a little bit more experience and a little more coachability, a little bit more maturity, like Tice may see those minutes. I think if year one for Robert Williams is really about getting him ingrained in the culture, getting him to understand the game planning and the strategy, getting him adjusted to NBA lifestyle, the work ethic, the training, if he can get all of that and get some decent minutes by the end of the season, I'd consider it a win. I'm going to be looking at him in years 2 and 3 to make more of a judgment in that regard. I mean, even as a sophomore, he's a younger player. We're going to move on topics, though, and we're going to hit Kawhi. But first, if you wear contacts, then you know how annoying it is to have a prescription year after year just to be able to buy more contacts. Simple Contacts is totally revolutionizing the industry using technology to make reviewing your prescription and buying contacts, well, simple. And here's how it works. Using your phone or computer, you can take the Simple Contacts vision test in less than 5 minutes, literally anywhere. A real doctor then reviews your result within 24 hours, writes you a new prescription, and boom, a fresh supply of brand new lenses on the way to your door. No more appointments or waiting rooms, no more overpaying. Simple Contacts brings the doctor's office to you, wherever you are, whenever you need it. And for me, I'm traveling all the time, so even if I make an appointment, I can't always keep it. This allows me to get my contacts while I'm on the go, even when I can't be home to go into the doctor's office. It's unbeatable. Every brand of lenses, prices are competitive. The prescription only costs $20. The lens prices are super competitive. Shipping is free. And best of all, our listeners will get $30 off their first Simple Contacts order. So to save $30 on your lenses, go to simplecontacts.com/CSL18 or enter the code CSL18 at checkout. I do have to mention this isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exams. You still need those occasionally, but it is the most convenient way to renew a prescription and reorder your contacts if your vision hasn't changed. Again, check out Simple Contacts. Get $30 off by going to simplecontacts.com/CSL18 or just enter the code CSL18 at checkout. Give it a try and thank me later. All right, John, so let's go to the Kawhi Leonard and LeBron, right?
Yeah.
And even Paul George. But I believe Sam Amick had an article kind of breaking this open a little bit. That's really the next stage, right? The draft is over. Now it's all the high-flying free agents that we have to watch them rotate, where they're going to go. Then the secondary pieces like a Marcus Smart fall into place. And as Danny watches all of that, then we start talking about somebody like Terry Rozier getting moved on because of his contract, because of trying to be able to re-sign him next year, because of his faux pas on draft night.
Yeah, exactly. This is the interesting time. I mean, I think free agency last year is the first time we saw this kind of post-draft deadline or pre-start of free agency really became a much more important area, especially as now without so much money being on the market, it's really hard to sign free agents. So now you've got Chris Paul who needs to re-sign. What's going to happen with Paul? Is he going to be able to? Are they going to come to a deal there? Was there really a wink deal about giving him the full max this summer? LeBron has the right to opt out. if he opts out, then you've got to think that he's probably not going to be looking at some other places in terms of sign and trade, and it will be really just a straight up go to Cleveland, go to LA, or possibly Philly, I suppose. But if he opts in, then, things are more available for Houston, Boston, San Antonio, and others who are over the cap. So all the LeBron choices are really in play, and Amick did a really nice job of kind of talking about the three pieces that are probably the most important in figuring out what LeBron might do, which is, of course, Chris Paul, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George. And Amick says Paul George it's looking optimistic. He may stay, and Kawhi Leonard doesn't want to go. Well, I should say, he wants to go to LA. The Spurs do not want to send him to the West, and especially not to LA. So which makes things a little bit more interesting, not just for Boston, but also for Philly and maybe Cleveland. I'm not sure that Cleveland has enough to either get Paul George or get Kawhi Leonard, but it's out there. We'll see. And I think that's what we're looking at over these next, 5-6 days. What's going to happen reading the tea leaves? Because as Kawhi Leonard said on his podcast with Bill Simmons last week, free agency started at the All-Star break. And so we're going to see where these conversations are going. And like last year with Chris Paul, who got miraculously traded to Houston, despite free agency hadn't opened, and all these things were all known, even though no one was supposed to talk to each other. We're going to see, I think, a similar thing this year, potentially even including the best player in the world, LeBron James.
Do you think, I'm not sure exactly how the salaries work out, and I'm not sure Philly would want to do it, but we've talked about LeBron landing in Philly, and there's been a lot of, I don't know if that would happen, but is there a scenario where they have enough salary, and probably with JJ Redick, if they did like a sign and trade kind of scenario, there's a scenario where they could trade for Kawhi and still sign LeBron James, correct? I mean, they have that kind of room. So that would be a scary proposition for the Celtics. As poised as we are next season, if they moved some of that young talent and used JJ Redick to fill in the salary, and JJ probably wouldn't be that upset about going to the Spurs either, right? I mean, that's, you're not going to get one of those scenarios where they're like, no, I don't want to make $23 million and go to the Spurs, right? It'd be one thing if they were trying to send him to Sacramento or something crazy. But in this case, they're going to a perennial, playoff contender coming from the East Coast. I think JJ would probably like it very much, and especially if it meant that he was going to get paid handsomely yet another consecutive year, and be on a competitive playoff team. That to me would be a dream scenario for him, and so I can see that. They move some of the young talent, they move him. Who knows what they'd have to include in the deal? I'm not sure that the bidding has really gotten to a place where we could have that. You have to believe that Embiid is untouchable and not headed to the Spurs, but maybe Simmons is in play in that deal, right? For Kawhi, and they'd get the defense, etc., and it would open up a spot for Fultz a little bit. But then if they were to go get LeBron, he's going to initiate the offense anyway. And so then, Fultz kind of works as an off guard instead of a distributing guard. And, maybe he doesn't even get in the starting lineup anyway, because we don't know where his head's at. But that's pretty dangerous. If you think about Embiid, Kawhi, and LeBron, that's an obstacle in the Eastern Conference for the Celtics.
Yeah, no question. I mean, to me, that's the worst case scenario for Boston, is that those two get together. Even if Kawhi, a close number two, I think, is Kawhi joining Philly, not LeBron alone. I think in the rankings of things I don't want to see, and that's usually how if Boston's not involved, that's usually how I look at it, is how does this help or hurt Boston? The worst case is LeBron and Kawhi end up in Philly. That's the worst case scenario. The second worst is Kawhi alone. And then the next case is probably LeBron. And the reason why I say that is that it's the shooting. It's opening things up and having that extra player.
That outside shooter. You're 100%
Absolutely.
right. But it's also the defense, because that was another place where Philly broke down big time. And I'm not saying LeBron doesn't play defense, but he doesn't play defense play after play the way Kawhi does. And also it's the long lasting factor.
Exactly.
Kawhi only being 27 means that's not, LeBron's going to do a 2-year deal. He's going to be on the downside of his career. He's still always going to be a performer until the day he hangs his shoes up. But at the same time, you have to all right, well, 2 years from now, they got to figure things out again. That's not so scary. But Kawhi is like the same age as Hayward. So this window, and albeit actually, it would put them almost on a very similar parallel as the Celtics with sort of a primetime star. And I realize the Celtics have, two, and then Horford, who's a little, I want to say past his prime, but on the tail end of his prime. But then they have also the young talent that's coming up behind it. So we've compared ourselves and our rebuild to Phillies several times over and over in recent years. And if they were to obtain Kawhi, it would put them on a very, very similar trajectory. And look at all the picks they made in the draft this year. That's kind of like the Celtics last year and a little bit like the Celtics next year with potentially 4 picks on the docket. So you can see them running similarly in the Eastern Conference for years to come if it's Kawhi and not LeBron. And if it's both, it's still the same deal.
Yeah, I think what it does is if it's both, then what happens is, obviously next year they're the favorite, and Philly will be, I think that they're going to be really, they're going to be good. They'll be thinner though. To make a deal to get Kawhi and LeBron, they're going to be thinner. You could say that you're going to you're going to deal Ben Simmons for Kawhi, but
I don't know. They were thin anyway. Let's be real.
They were.
They barely even went 7 deep, right? So
yeah, but part of that was they're going to lose Bellinelli. They're going to lose Ilyasova. You're going to lose
Redick and Simmons probably in the trade. Yep.
Simmons. Yeah. So you are kind of thinning things, but like you said, it kind of in the same way that the way Boston built the team this year, Philly's team next year were kind of similar, except you're dealing one of your key core pieces. That'd be like Boston dealing, Tatum or Brown effectively. It changes the mix quite a bit from last year to this year, or this coming year, I should say. So, it's interesting. It's something that's going to be on the table. I would have thought before draft night that there's no way that the front office in Philly has the capacity to pull off a deal like this, knowing it's Brett Brown and a whole bunch of, kind of lieutenants of what were Brian Colangelo's front office. They ran a pretty good deal to get that Miami pick and Zaire Smith. So again, we're talking about
not to mention being willing to stir things up in human resources and doing
so. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, there's a number of different pieces to this, but for me, I think that the fact that they made that deal is a sign that, Philly is something to watch here over the next week to 2 weeks.
Yeah. Good on Brett Brown, right? Seriously. I don't want to say making a name for himself. He had a name, but,
but as a front office
front office, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
He's kind of doing the Danny Ainge, right? He's going from coach to potentially front office guy and executive and building his resume. And he does have the cachet and he's a very intelligent man. And so I can see this working out for him. He's coming along at the right time. That's the other thing. Look at all the assets, and then because of the Colangelo scenario, that might have been an opportunity that wasn't available to him in the past, but, just by de facto, right? Like, who else was going to do it? And so I can always think of that Parcells thing, it's like being able to go shopping or having to cook the meal, but not being able to buy the groceries, right? And
right.
There's Brett Brown being able to do both. And there is something to be said for it. It's just an enormous task because of how much you need to know about how hard you have to work. That's usually the limitation is having to do all of it and just not having the time to do it all well and specialize. But I think there are moments in time where you do a little bit of both because you know what you want to accomplish, and then it tends to expose when the front office and the coach aren't on the same page, which is really what we have going on for us in such a positive way with the Celtics organization, because it seems like coach and GM, even when they're not on the same page, they're still on the same page. You know what I mean? Like, they understand the role, and so they work well together regardless.
In the short term, it works for Philly because this is the time of year where it doesn't really matter. You're not, there's
game
always
planning day to day. The season's over.
Right. You can get away with it now. What's impressive is, making a deal with Bridges for Zaire Smith and a future pick. Usually, we've seen this before with Doc and Stan Van Gundy and these other coaches who've had dual roles. They try to get the players who can play right now or ready to play, who can help them win now. And Brett Brown really took kind of a punt. He kind of looked for the long term. And, maybe Zaire Smith will be a better player next year than Mikal Bridges. I don't think so, but he could be. And if so, he got a great pick on top of the better player, which I think many people see, Smith's upside as one being beyond Bridges anyway.
Yeah.
But that's kudos to him, like you said, and it just makes you a little bit more nervous. But, the other piece of that too, Brett Brown came up through the Spurs system. So he knows Kawhi, but he also knows Pop. And it's interesting to see how this goes because the Pop's guys do respect Pop, even if they go to different locations or not. And whereas Pop and the Spurs have been so obviously,
contentious.
Yeah,
it's just been contentious. So maybe Brown respects Pop's position on that and doesn't want anything to do with Kawhi either, right?
You wonder. It does make you wonder. I mean, it seems like he's not in a position to really make the final say, but you got to wonder if that's got to play into it because my goodness, I mean, it's Pop for God's sakes. And this is, a big reason why so many people have great concerns with bringing Kawhi in.
Yeah.
If you have a problem with Pop, then there's a lot of people who would have problems in that situation. So,
all right. So to put a cap on this week's show, I'm going to tie back to our last show before draft night. I'm going to pose this question and then we'll close. I was definitely adamantly against Kawhi. We had two other topics we wanted to hit on last week's show that we didn't hit because the Kawhi conversation took everything over in that entire debate, right? But however, it has changed because if the prospects of Kawhi going to Philly are greater and how that shakes up the Eastern Conference and challenges the Celtics and potentially tantalizes LeBron to sign there on low money as a free agent and maybe not even that low of money, right? Because of the cap space that they have available. With that in mind, do you almost want to be more aggressive getting Kawhi just to keep him away from Philly?
I think you think about it. Yeah. I mean, I think the long-term concern of having to deal with that combo, is really concerning. I think if you're Boston, having said that, in the week or 2 weeks, 2 weeks, no, the week.
No,
since.
it's a week. It's only been a week, but
My
because
God.
we did the draft night show.
Whoa. Yeah. In the week since.
Kawhi induced a time warp. That's how bad it was when we got into that debate.
I'm less bullish on Kawhi now than I was then. Zach Lowe's piece really kind of made me think a little bit more about it. And I still think the numbers back up what I'm saying and that Kawhi has always been a better player, even his first year than Jalen. But, until you can get that assurance that he wants to be there, that he's going to commit there, that there's a framework of a deal. And admittedly, you're doing this with an agent who has never signed anyone else ever and doesn't have the cachet that you can bank on.
Danny likes the guys he trusts. Danny likes the guys he trusts. Yep.
So unless you can get that, it's hard to say Boston would do a deal. There's just no way around it. You would have to get that assurance. If you can get that assurance, okay. But without that, I will see what happens. And, look, LeBron, who knows? If they get LeBron and Kawhi, it could be concerning, but LeBron has a finite shelf life. He may be an alien, but at some point it's going to be over for him. And Boston is still well suited for that long run. And I still think they're competitive with a Embiid, Kawhi, LeBron, a battle. I still think they can make that.
Yeah, when they're healthy, it's a different team with a lot more closers on the squad. So, even that Cleveland series would have been dramatically different. They might have been able to close Cleveland this year in 5 games potentially if they had just had the right closers on the roster. Just we had some youth mishaps, I'll say, just because of not being on that stage against the greatest and that presenting the challenge that it does mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're ready to move, I just want to talk. Can we just really quickly say, what do you think is going to happen with Marcus Smart? Do you think anything's going to happen between now and the start of free agency? Do you think there's a chance they sign him before he gets to free agency for a short deal?
They definitely could. The short deal is probably the best way to go because he's expressing that he wants to stay. I think he wants to see what this team can do next season before really putting pressure on. And I think he wants to see how much value he can bring in the postseason in a certain role coming off the bench. He stripped some weight last year. He really got it together. His hops, especially after he broke his hand and came back, was pretty amazing. The way he shot in Game 7, certainly would want that one back. And I think maybe his agents tested the waters enough to know what they're really going to get. And if they don't get anything, if they don't get any offers, right, or any like really substantial offers, they're almost bringing the price down. So I think if Smart and his agent believe that that the Celtics are offering something that's fair, that it's better for them to take that now than take the gamble on that number actually coming down, because Smart's, he could get the qualifying offer. Nobody could do anything much above it, and he could end up losing. It just depends on what the Celtics are willing to give him now to put it behind him.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I am so in the tank for Marcus Smart now. It's ridiculous. After he saw my tweet on the night before the draft and is sending the pair of sneakers to my kid. So, I am.
Is he really? I missed that.
Yes.
You're getting a pair of sneakers sent from Marcus Smart to your house.
Game worn sneakers. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. How did this not lead the show? You've got 3 minutes to describe the scenario before we close. But how did that not lead the show? That should have led the show.
So look, he was extremely online. He was posting, and I just said something about, Marcus is great. My youngest, we went to obviously the Houston game. We talked about that, and I just said, he's his favorite player, wears his shirt all the time, which is all true. And there's a lot of people out there that will do this stuff to try to get stuff from pro athletes. I think it's ridiculous. But this is all true. And so he saw it. He says, I gotta get him he texted me, he added me and said, I gotta get him some shoes. Let me know how I can get to you. And so I said, is this for real? I'm like, check your DMs. And he said, yeah, let's do it. So,
no way. That's awesome.
This is happening.
All right. So because we do video now, once you get the sneaks, we're going to do a big intro to the show. We're going to do it right this next time. We're going to put the shoes up on the screen. You're going to show them off, and we're going to give a big thanks, and we're going to bring your son on. He needs to come on we need to get him on the show to talk about the sneakers and how grateful he is. And we'll make sure that Marcus gets a big thank you for sending those along to your son. I mean, come on. We've been Celtics fans forever. And, every time a player, biggest Marcus Smart fans, you're right. I mean, I might have wavered a little bit this season, but that was the first time ever. You and I have been in his camp. You didn't waver. I wavered. That's why I'm not getting sneakers.
So.
And you are.
Not really.
I wavered a little. I was pretty mad about the temper tantrum. I was.
You were.
I was.
But look, this is the guy we want, and we've been supporters of his for a long time. And so Riley got on, did the CLNS thing with Nick.
Yeah, on Super Bowl Sunday. That's right.
Now I'll bring the youngest in. So, the sons of CSL, we're just a week after Father's Day. The sons of CSL here, making good on Celtic Stuff Live.
That would be an awesome podcast 10 years from now. Sons of CSL. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know there's Sons of Sam Horn, but Sons of CSL is
Sam Horn. That's right.
All right. That's going to do it for this week's show, but it's been an entertaining one, and we give you a little teaser so that you'll make sure you come back and see Marcus Smart sneakers and get an introduction to John's son. The broadcast will be available on demand on the CLNS Media mobile app, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at CSL_Justin and at CSL_Duke. A heartfelt thank you to everybody for tuning in, and remember, you can help support the show by subscribing to Celtic Stuff Live on iTunes and Stitcher. We'd love it if you gave us a rating and a review, because your feedback is extremely important to our show. For staff writer Samuel Elias, executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of CLNS Media Nick Gelso, and my co-host John Duke, I'm Justin Poulin. Thank you for listening to another edition of Celtic Stuff Live.
Celtic Stuff Live.